So, so I should probably start off by apologizing. We're not going to get to look at some visual scripting today, unfortunately, because Aline has got tonsillitis, so she has to rest
Oh.
her throat.
Oh no, we
But
can
yeah,
do that. We can do
you
it on
sure?
day 6. Yep. I have
Well, there you
plenty
go.
of tea with me.
Plenty of tea. Cures whatever ails you, apparently. All sorts of mad teas. Yeah, okay, well then scratch that. Never mind. Pretend I didn't say anything, and yeah, we can totally look at some visual scripting today. I think some people have already been having a go at it. Yeah, there's been quite a flurry in the new channel that I've created for people who are using SDK v2, which is great to see. So yeah, I'm pretty excited with how things are going
Some visual
to
scripting
develop.
today.
Um, yeah, I think something that's worth talking about a little bit is how uh, how we can kind of grow the functionality of the SDK or enhance it or continue to add to it. Basically, is what I'm trying to say. Um, Something that's actually in the documentation, but if you click through, it'll just say more info coming soon, basically. But uh, something called the contribution guidelines is kind of, I guess, what I'm talking about. In essence, I'm hoping there'll be a fairly streamlined process that you can request stuff be added to the SDK. In fact, we've built it that way so that the entire evolution of it over the next, maybe few years, as it continues to grow, can be driven by all of us together as a community. Um, we kind of have a loose idea as to how the process is going to work, but I'm going to detail it in more specific terms in the documentation. But in essence, because the SDK is hosted on a platform called GitHub, there's a process within GitHub known as pull requests, which is basically where you can suggest a change to the code base. You can make a change and then put that in front of us for us to review it. And if we're happy, then we can merge those changes into the system. Now, don't worry too much about all of those terms that I've just said if they make no sense to you at all, because I'm sure the process will become pretty simple. And I think when it comes to specifically Unity components that already exist that you want to be able to access through the JavaScript interface specifically, you can probably already access a lot of them through visual scripting, but through the JavaScript interface, there should be a way for you to just write out a script, submit it to us, and we can click approve, and then that will basically be included with the next SDK update. That's basically how we've built it to run. I don't know if any of you who've already got access to the SDK have decided to take a little look at some of the source code of the components that it uses. Maybe not. Maybe none of you have got that far. That's fine. But if you do happen to look into them, you'll notice that there's some comments in the code that say something along the lines of banter generated. What that means is that we're using a technique called code generation or code gen for short. And large parts of the code for our components is automatically generated, which means that you can basically submit just a definition file as an update. And then we accept that in and we generate all the necessary code on the C# side, all the necessary code on the JavaScript or TypeScript side with the click of a button. So it makes adding new stuff to this honestly a breeze. And it makes it extremely easy. And that's kind of the way that we've built it from the ground up, that most of the code that's involved in the logistics, right, the glue to be able to make all of this kind of stuff work, most of it is auto-generated code. We've written the code that writes the code. if that makes sense. So
Yeah.
when you go to write the code, you don't have to write the code. We can just make the code that we wrote to write the code.
Woo!
Oh no.
Perfectly.
Oh God. What have we done? Yeah, but yeah, long story short, if you had a component that you liked, let's say, somebody wanted to add, let's say, a hinge joint, which is one of the Unity components that you can use along with rigid bodies, right, to make hinges like doors, stuff like that. We don't have that yet. But if you wanted to add that, you could basically create a little definition that maps out the properties of that. Submit it to us. We click the button to generate the rest of the code and put it out with the next build. That's hopefully the process that will be involved there. There may even be uh, yeah, we need to basically think about the cadence of how quickly builds will come out. But there may even be a paradigm in future where we kind of stick to a regular weekly build that kind of comes out. So you can almost be guaranteed if you need a feature, you can roughly estimate where that is going to land, assuming we don't run into any kind of major problems like we did on Thursday. uh, but yeah, so that's basically how contributions are going to work to the new SDK, so that you can access a lot of that stuff and use it from the JavaScript side. If you're mostly interested in visual scripting, like I say, you've probably already got access to a lot of this stuff, so you don't necessarily need that, right? Um, but yeah, why don't I kick off? As you all know, feel free to make your way up to the little podium there, and you can ask me a question if anybody has one. Anybody's been playing around with the new SDK? Go ahead, Lee. What can I do you for?
A couple questions. So where does people go to get the new SDK or try their hand at it? Uh,
That's a great question. Right now we're trying to do what we call a soft launch, where we're basically not talking about it, but it's actually released. Uh, The best way to go and get it is to access the new docs that I've been sharing around. In there, there's instructions on how to get it, how to actually install it, and all of the necessary parts of that. Um, but yeah, like I say, I think probably the best way is if you know somebody who's interested, just ping me
I
and
do.
let me know, and I'll add them into the group. There's
Okay.
a dedicated channel in the Discord right now where we're trying to coordinate, questions and feedback. And it's mostly just about trying to get as much valuable feedback in this time right now. So we're, I guess, looking for people who are really eager to sink their teeth in and start playing with things and start to find out what's wrong so they can give us good valuable feedback, right?
Mhm.
We might be less inclined if you're much newer to this kind of stuff, right? Because we're trying to avoid a scenario where we're having to handhold people too much with, just general stuff around how Unity works or how JavaScript works. And we're more interested in people who know roughly how to use these tools, but can ask us questions or give us good feedback on it. And then, of course, once it's open to the wide public, then, of course, anybody can jump in.
Right. Yeah, I know somebody. Um,
Cool.
and I will talk to him, or I'll push him your way. I think that they're
Yeah.
a little shy, a little intimidated. Um, but there's
Do I know them?
yeah. Ravioli.
Oh, Ravi's already in the channel.
Oh, he is.
Yeah, he pinged me a few days ago. I added him in.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I told him to ping you.
Right.
Okay, that's good.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's good.
Yeah.
Also, I've heard some more complaints about people seeing well-groomed balls avatars.
Right.
Uh,
Yes.
is that a Ready Player Me thing? It has to be,
From what
right?
from my investigation, it seems like it is a Ready Player Me problem. The only thing I can determine is that maybe in some regions, or possibly in some cases, some corrupt stuff has got cached. That's the only thing I can determine at this point, but we're still investigating, and I'm still not 100% sure. We've got a few different examples of logs, but we haven't been able to reproduce the problem ourselves. I think the next thing we'll start to do is try a VPN in some different regions and try and determine where people are. But from what I've heard, there's been reports of this happening in other apps too that use Ready Player Me. This particular issue seems to be fairly widespread. Honestly, I have a backlog of issues with Ready Player Me that they still haven't addressed. So this one is just another one to add on to the pile, unfortunately. I think those guys are really driving the point home that they want to really, sully all the relationships that they've made with whatever the 8,000 partners that they're integrating
Right.
with, because they do just seem to want to let it all kind of go to crap, and that's unfortunate because it's such a core function of what we're building. But we're building out our own system for that exact reason, right? We'd made that decision quite a while ago, so this isn't anything new. As we all know, I don't know how many times we've been dealing with weird problems. The plague,
Right.
if you remember that.
Right.
That's kind of when it all started, and we were never the same after that. Everybody was affected by the plague.
So in the meantime, just I guess everyone just moved to, if you experience that, I guess, move to a banter avatar.
A banter avatar? No, there isn't really anything like that exists right now. But in the future there will be. But I would say the best thing for anybody who's experiencing that right now to do is to submit their logs. The more evidence we can get, the
Okay.
more we can find out about the problem. I guess anybody who's experiencing it, if they can share their general location, maybe down to the state level or something like that, or even just to the country level, is probably enough.
Right.
That'll help us determine if this is something that's related to a specific territory or not. And yeah, I mean, clear cache and reload, right? Clear cache and reload, clear spaces, but
Right.
also avatars. So that's another thing that people can do. In the meantime, we're going to investigate ourselves and see if there is any kind of workaround that we can do to mitigate the problems. So this isn't our first rodeo trying to figure out how to solve the problems that Ready Player Me causes. So we'll be on that as a priority, I'd say, tomorrow morning when
Okay.
everybody comes back into work.
Yeah, I just heard a couple people talk about it, and they were asking me how to, what to do, and I said, well, try changing your avatar.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, you could just tell them to just just grab those balls, baby.
Right.
Just
Right.
just embrace them. Just
Bald.
lean into them. Just
Bald
hold them
is
close.
beautiful.
Get. Was that too far, Kalima?
Embrace the beam.
I mean, what you could do is brag. You go, hey, look at these balls. You haven't got these
Yeah.
balls. You ain't got no balls. Isn't that right? No balls. Oh
It's
God.
better to have two than one.
That's. I mean,
That's true.
I don't know. Yeah, I guess so. Yeah, two is. Yeah, two is a bigger number. Anyway, go ahead, Arnold. What can I do?
Okay, I'm just thinking. So yeah, if you're playing an online game, FPS game, for example, everything, every bullet and everything is calculated from a server, right?
Not necessarily, but go ahead.
So my thought is Banter going to have a server or engine, something on the server side that you can tap into for coordinating things in a world? Real time?
Probably not something that we would provide, right? Because heavily specialized, heavily custom, heavily bespoke could be costly to develop for each individual use case, right? Because it really depends on what it is that you're going to do with it. Now, Banter would have the capability for somebody to necessarily build that themselves and integrate it with Banter. But I think it's possibly outside of the scope of what we should be thinking about, because it's just I think it's just too bespoke, right? Yeah, it's too bespoke for us at a platform level to try to build something like that, because making something like that generic would probably take away from, the overall value I think you could get from it. But I mean, the truth is, if you're talking about a really fast-paced FPS, if we're talking about Call of Duty or something like that, AAA grade, then maybe server side is a good idea. Honestly, some of the AAAs don't even do that, so maybe that's overkill. Uh, any strategy that you pick when it comes to something like that is going to have, pros and cons associated with it. A lot of different ones, right? The server connection is difficult because you're trying to coordinate potentially physical interactions over the internet with possibly hundreds of milliseconds of latency in every direction, right? So that's always a big problem, but it gives you that authoritative source that you can make that decision and reliably know, okay, that person hit that person and that's the way it is. That's how it's going down. But I mean, there's other strategies. You can use the client of the person who was hit to determine if a hit has occurred. You can use the client of the person who fired to determine if a hit has occurred. Each of those comes with their own strategies with their own pros and cons as well. The biggest one generally being, if you can make your internet crap, you can cheat in any multiplayer game, basically. If you can reduce the
Yeah.
quality of your internet, that's typically what people do. Or if you can reduce your frame rate, that's also another thing. We hear it all the time. Fucking Gorilla Tag kids wanting 45 hertz on their Quest. Can you imagine that? Wanting 45 frames on purpose.
So, yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, like I say, there's a lot of different ways that you can approach that problem, and each of them has, benefits and pitfalls, I guess. But yeah, for us to get that involved in that kind of a design choice to sort of provide that as a suite of products is probably way out of the scope of what we should doing we should be doing. And honestly, those kind of resources would be better devoted to us kind of trying to improve the client itself and the SDK.
Yep, that was just a question.
Cool. That's a good one. Awesome. Yeah. So, what do you think, Elaine? What time makes sense? Are you thinking we'll go halfway and maybe have a look at some of the basics of visual scripting, or do you want to do
Yay.
less than that?
Yeah, halfway sounds good.
Cool. Well,
But I mean, we can
Peroxide.
still keep the questions going. So
Yeah. Why not?
while
Why
I
not?
fiddle
We'll all just
around
transition into a
with
new
screen
space.
share, people can still ask your
There we go.
questions and you bounce
Sounds
around.
good. Sounds good. Yeah, okay. Well, as I say, anybody who's got any questions, feel free to make your way up to the podium. If nobody comes up, I'm going to start picking people at random, and I'm going to start asking them weird questions. And none of us want that. So, by the way, thanks whoever's doing the pre-megaphoning. That's really handy. Whoever's doing that, thank you.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Pony. What can I do you for?
With the SDK2, is the network sync something that we could do, or is it something we're waiting for you guys to work on? I'm just asking because I'm unsure.
Sure. So the current network sync object script that's in the old SDK will still work just fine. In the short term, we're going to make a new Banter component that
Gotcha.
uses that same networking component. But there are still some problems with that networking system overall. But the plan
Yeah.
for us is to rewrite that along with a lot of the rest of our networking in the near future. So at that point, we'll improve on that Banter networking component at that point. Yeah. So that would be one for us to do because
That's
we're
fine.
interacting with that networking stack.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm glad because that one's up here somewhere for me.
Yeah.
Admit it.
Yeah,
That was way
absolutely.
beyond me. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem at all. Thanks, Pony. Oh, my bad. I stabbed you with a Spider-Man rope there. Oh God. Yeah. networking is quite an interesting one. We've been looking at ways to kind of reimagine how we're going to approach networking in the new world. Let's call it that, right? I'm not going to be able to call it the new SDK for much longer. I'm just going to call it the new world, right? And the new world encompasses everything. It's the new SDK. It's new avatars that are coming down the line. It's body tracking and OSC support and all that kind of madness. But yeah, networking is quite interesting. Like if I tell you about how networking works right now with our avatars, there's basically 4 points on your body that are synced to everybody else, right? Your hands, your head, and the ball at your feet. That's why your legs come up, and that's why everybody else can see your legs coming up when they do, right? That's why whenever you hang off the edge of something and you pull up your legs, everybody can see that because they actually sync the ball position and use that to position your feet, right? Gives us that nice sort of that animated jump sort of feeling to it. But what's interesting there is obviously there's a lot more going on with my avatar, right? We've got full inverse kinematics to drive the elbows, the hips, the knees, everything in between, apart from the hands, the head, and the feet. So actually, what you've got here is a lot of stuff that's going on locally, you know, for each of the remote versions of you that I'm seeing. There's a lot of calculation that's going on there. And it's a combination of things, right? It's IK, but it's also animation, right? Because each avatar has walk animations. Oh, I can't do it there. But yeah, each avatar has walk animations that are blended in real time with the IK. So even if I'm crouching a little bit, it still looks like I'm kind of walking and doing some sort of crazy feet thing. But yeah, that's how it works currently. Now, we're looking at a new approach to this with some of the work that we've been doing with Naeem, sorry, Nimso, as you might know him, and some of the work that he's going to be doing, building out after our character controller. We're going to be moving on to the rig and the rigging and, the avatar in general, let's say. And part of that is trying to find out if there's a way for us to approach, uh, you know, what amount of data is required to represent a full body avatar movement, and is there any possibility that we might be able to synchronize everything that the body needs so that for all the remote versions of you, we don't have to run IK and we don't have to run animations. And for what everybody sees in the remote version of you, it will be exactly what you see, which makes it, uh, it makes it work really nicely with body tracking, let's say, in the future, right? So that we could have potentially paved the way for that. What we've been talking about, just to get into the nitty gritty of it, and this is all theoretical at this point. There's still quite a lot of testing to do. But we've been looking at, right, typically if I wanted to sync my hand and my head positions, I've got 7 pieces of data to sync per point, let's say, right? I've got 3 positions, X, Y, and Z for position. 3 floats for position, 3 points, and I've got 4 for rotation because we're doing quaternions, that crazy stuff. But so that's 7 per position. So if you think of every single bone that's in the body and having 7 values for each and every one of those and trying to synchronize all of those over the network at once, it ends up becoming an enormous amount of data. You're in the realm of what it would be like to stream live video or certainly high quality audio at that point in terms of the amount of data that every single user is sending. And of course, that's an exponential increase whenever you talk about multiple people coming into the room because everybody has to send it to everybody in essence, right? So what we've been looking at is potentially a new approach where we take basically the rotations of each bone and use that because we've already got the length of the bone, which is kind of baked into the bone. It's the distance between, the previous bone and the next bone. So we've already got that in the rig. We actually don't need to worry about it. But if we can just decide, okay, my shoulder's rotated this way, then the bone comes down here. From that, then my my forearm is rotated this way, and that's where that bone goes to. And then from there, it connects on to the hand, right? And the hand has its own separate, but also compressed data for all of the hand positions. In fact, that's something quite interesting that we've been working on. So we want to be able to support custom hand posing, right? So you can pick up an object and have a custom hand pose on that object. You could have two-handed objects like two-handed guns and have your hands properly posed on that object. And what we've done is we've come up with a data structure that allows us to describe the pose of the hand, and a data structure that we can just feed values into. In fact, we're going to have something that you can just record your hand position, right? In future, you'll be able to use hand tracking, record the pose that you want, and potentially then bake that into an object or multiple of
Nice.
those, maybe if you've got different grab points, right? So then we're really starting to kind of get into that physical hand interaction then with objects and how your hands are going to behave when objects are in your hand. And yeah, it's also going to allow us to obviously redefine all of the hand poses that we have, and make sure we can keep the middle finger in there and keep it so that it goes real slow.
So that
Is this on the
means you
live stream?
can add sit commands to the shares as well.
Go ahead. Go ahead. Get close. I'll do it slow. Tell me when you're kind of close. Oh
Make
boy.
sure it's real
I'm gonna back away.
close.
Back and away. But what's interesting, right? You'll notice that when you go to make a hand gesture, what happens is you only actually see the gesture. It just happens, right? It's animated, but there's no intermediary. There's no middle ground there, right? With the new system, you'll actually be able to press on your grips and your triggers and see the fingers sort of slightly move in or move in and out as you do that, right? And that's part of this new system that we're looking at for the hands. What's interesting about it is that it's only one value for each finger bone, which once again, this really plays into how much data is required to describe this stuff, and how much of that we can compress so we can stream it over the network. The real benefit of streaming this over the network, one of the biggest performance areas for Banter, and honestly for any app like this, is the avatars, right? Because they're a variable. The space itself is just the space, but we could have 5 people, 10 people, 30 people, 63 people in one instance. And the problem with that is then I've got 63 different IK instances, solvers, physics, animations, animators, all of that kind of crap running. 2 of them for each of the hands, several states, machines, all that nonsense. But the idea behind this new system is that we can just simplify it all down to a very simple data structure that can describe almost the whole body, including the hand pose. And then synchronize that to the player on the remote end and remove the need for any inverse kinematics or any animation on any of the remote avatars, right? So
Nice.
this is honestly pretty theoretical at this point, but the hope there is that this system will allow us to open up a whole big area of performance, and be able to kind of have more people in a space, have people be higher quality when they're in that space, really open up how much we can get away with there. And also, it means that we can do a lot more with your own local avatar with that extra performance overhead, plus the fact that we now know that, you know, we've got potentially a universal system to stream any body movement you could make to everybody else. That means that we can add new things in future. Hand tracking becomes very easy to slot into a system like that. Potentially any other kind of future tracking as well can just slot really nicely in there. So yeah, I don't know. I'm waffling, but we're about 2 minutes over, so that's probably a good shot to jump over to maybe another space where we could start talking about visual scripting, if that sounds good to you, Aline. And maybe I could tell you a little bit about the pet bone.
Yay.
The pet
Bone.
The pet
connected to
bone.
the cat bone.
Oh.
The cat bone's connected to the pet bone. Pet bone's connected to the
Banter bone.
leg bone. Who said leg bone? Who said leg bone? Oh, Bailey.
There's only,
That's great.
there's only one person who can pet my
Is that
bone.
Discord Kitty on your t-shirt?
It is,
Yes, it is.
What?
Running
Been
some of that
famous.
merch made by Trey.
Only Mrs. Hubbard can
Nice.
pet
Yep.
my bone.
IT Trey.
What a
Love it.
skeleton
Yeah.
for-
I
All
highly
right.
recommend
Love it.
checking out some of his shirts, by the way.
Right, where we going? There's no portals
Well,
in here.
looks like
Probably have one
Aline
of
is
you in there too.
warming
did.
up.
Yep. I won't be
Spinning up
surprised
the
if there's
pole.
actually one of you.
I'm sorry. It's completely at the end of the list. Takes some time to get there.
I'm good.
You're traveling
Go
to another space,
recent,
guys.
rather than,
We've got to simulate the
featured.
actual journey.
Alien.
Just take a moment.
Often
Appreciate the journey.
Embrace the journey.
Everybody,
Oh, Pony
everybody,
missed it by
turn in a circle.
Oh, what?
you going to
Somehow-
a cube on Banter?
Yeah, can you throw a portal?
Yeah. Let's go to recent history.
Oh, somehow I can't throw a portal.
I nearly fell.
Oh, are they
Oh
turned
no,
off
you
in this
can't throw a
space?
portal
Yeah,
in
that's
here.
all in
Yeah,
this
you
space.
did.
Turned off.
Oh,
Okay.
Oh, damn it.
Everybody.
Just jump
We need
on
to
it.
turn those
everybody
back
go
on.
and,
Crystal line.
okay, so
log
we
in
jump
on
in there then.
people. Everybody
Tony,
go
we're
online so people
learning.
can find you.
We warning.
Everybody go online so people can find you and drop in on you.
So we're going to queue.
I'll tell you what, anybody
Just-
who's
just go on
unfamiliar,
Go and featured. It will show up at the top as soon as I'm jumping over.
I've been
Yeah, a
appearing
few people.
offline. I don't
Is it
want to.
Take
Cube
the
Bands?
journey. Let the journey take you.
I'll stay offline.
Let's go, my friends.
Cubant. Let's see over there.
Oh, hi Shane.
Oh,
Oh, sure.
what is this?
Where are we? This
Oh
is
no.
See?
Oh,
Just
no,
get
you're
up
not.
close to the screen, Shizaki.
What?
It's up and close.
No way.
It's the only way we could do it,
Oh, the
Shizaki.
sounds and everything. Why is this spinning?
Go and eat some pizza.
Yeah.
Not pizza.
Already.
I'm here to learn visual scripting. You guys can have fun.
Yes, patience. They're on
Pa-
pizza
patience.
when we're done here. The pizza
There's
Yes.
pizza when we're done,
there
folks.
when you behave. So,
Yes. I'll sit and be good. John, where are you? Cuddle
Pizza.
buddy.
It does need to be in the
I should mention, right now as it stands, visual
was terrifying.
scripting is kind of half released.
Take a seat.
It only
We
works
sit and
on the
learn.
desktop client. The Android client, we need to make some adjustments to it. But we should have that fixed, I would say, by the next couple of days, next Monday or Tuesday or something. We just ran into an issue with memory overflow last minute, so we just need to do some profiling to figure that out, and then we can get that bit. Yeah, totally.
Yeah, I'm very
Screw it.
forgetful. Hi Shane.
Pizza.
Hi, Bailey, for the millionth time. No, I'm taking
Okay,
that balloon off you.
now you can take the balloon.
That's fun.
We
Okay,
shall sit and learn,
Toy
John.
that I'm going to be happy with for forever.
everyone ready?
All I needed was a balloon. That is it.
Double hula hoop action.
Oh, wow, that looks good in here.
Oh.
Action.
Wow, that's clear.
Bro, this is great for ADHD. Can we just use this balloon forever?
My bad, my headphones plugged in.
Crystal Lake by day.
I stole your hula hoop.
Did
Yeah,
you
we
notice
still
it's
need
the
a
daytime
better
version?
title. Okay,
Oh, God.
so
Look at
first,
this.
obviously, you want to add visual scripting. So there are actually two components for visual scripting. One is a script machine, or former known as flow machine. This is, yeah, you can just think about this is just a basic C# script where you have your
Does
life
any-
cycles, your triggers. What do you want to say, Shane?
Oh, I just wasn't seeing the screen, but I had to press the power button.
Gotta
Ignore me.
Power, my friends, if you can't see it.
Sorry, go ahead. Didn't mean to interrupt.
Oh no.
Okay. And then you also have a state machine. A state machine is essentially just a script machine on steroids. So it just has, how the name already says, different states. So let me quickly add a new one. And yeah, also both of them have embedded and graph. When you switch to graph, you actually have to create one and it will save it as an asset in your project. So you just have here state test. And there we go. And now we have here our first state. And when we double click, we go into the state. By default, you always have on state graphs those three events. So this is how actually your script starts. So you have something that's called on state enter. So every time the state is entered will play, you have an event that runs on update and an event that runs on state exit. And when we create other state, so you just hold control and drag, and then it creates a new state. So here you have the same three events, but also you have this transition segment in here. And in here, this will actually define when the states are changing. So for example, you just, I don't know, you do here something on update, like you're just rotating a cube or rotate this object just around the y-axis. And this will continue rotating until you say here, there's a condition to be met. And the condition could be, for example, here we also go in the event section.
Hey, yo,
And then you can go in input, for example,
Push the power on your headset. and then
super
push it
simple
again.
keyword input
Hold up.
space down.
Push the power
And
button
this
on
will
your
trigger
headset, and
the
then push it again.
transition
Oh,
and
sorry.
will move to the next state. So if we, if we give this a quick shot.
Oh man, thank you. Yeah.
So we are running now here on update. In the start state, it shows that it's blue. And let me actually quickly find my game view. Oh, it's there. We press space, and now we are in the second state. The transition happened. And this is especially useful when you have different functions. They need to be running on update, but you don't want to run them all at the same time. To save performance, it's pretty nice that the visual scripting system has a built-in state machine. Okay, now let's go get more into the nitty-gritty of a basic script machine. So let me just remove the state graph and we'll add a script machine. Also, I'm switching now to embedded, so I don't have to actually, no, I don't want this. But if you use embedded, you don't need to save any asset. It is saved on the object in your scene. The only downside is that if you are working on your script graph and you're working on it on runtime, for example, I'm pressing now play and here I'm saying on update, rotate again. We see here our object is rotating. But if I'm exiting now play mode, it's all reverted, so nothing gets saved. But if you create an asset, so it's a graph object, and now we press play. And now let's do the rotate. And now we exit play mode, and it's still there. So everything you do in play mode when you're using a graph asset will be saved. So this means you can just go completely in play mode, just stay in play mode all the time and build your logic while the game is running.
Nice.
Okay, then I would say let's go through the basic events. So the basic life cycles are on start. So this event will just trigger once when the scene loads or when the object it's on gets enabled for the very first time, but only for the first time. If you want it to be triggered every time the object gets enabled, then you have here in the, let me actually see where this is. So life cycle, you also have the event that is called on enable. This event will every time trigger the object is getting enabled, which is super handy because most of the time you just want to turn stuff on and off. And also those events, they will only trigger once. So you get one signal and then it will run through your nodes and then it's done. On the other side, you have all the update functions. So you have the on update that will run every frame. You have the fixed update. This will run on the Shane, correct me if I'm wrong, but this will run on the physics tick. So this will stay in line with the physics calculation.
I think that's right.
So
That's correct. Yeah, that's correct.
if you're doing anything with rigid bodies in here, so if I'm having here the rigid body group, if you use any of those functions here, you definitely have to do it in a fixed update, or else it will just be inaccurate and yeah, we'll have some hiccups. It will still work, but you will get some weird results sometimes.
Yeah, you don't want your
Exactly.
physics to be dependent on frame rate, so.
Yes. And then also you got late update, which will run at the end of the frame. So I think on update will run first when a frame is calculated. On late update will run at the end to make sure everything else is already calculated. So if you have some timing issues, this is most of the time the solution.
Triffid has a question. What is it, Triffid?
Yes.
Probably not.
Yeah, but his controller has his hand in the air.
Sorry, my bad. Shoseki's carrying a big box.
Don't leave him hanging, man.
He's moving again.
Shoseki's got a new TV. Don't do that to your TV.
Okay, and then we also have on disable event, which is pretty self-explanatory. It will trigger when the object gets disabled, and you have on destroy. So when you are calling, no, not when the object gets destroyed. So when you call object.destroy, and then what is really nice, you can also add a time. So for example, you call this function and you say, okay, a time of 5, then it waits 5 seconds and then it destroys the object. And as soon as the object gets destroyed, it will still run this event and will run the scripts, the functions and nodes you have attached to the onDestroy before the object is completely gone. So for example, you destroy the object, but you still want to spawn a particle system. That's super useful, where you can use the onDestroy event. Okay, after events, I would say the controls are the most important ones. So here you get the if statement. So you can For example, let's see if I remember this correctly. Nope, I don't remember. But yeah, anything you get. So purple, that's a bool. That's just a true or false value. Then you have blue, that's a float. Also, when I'm quickly creating some variables. Oh, maybe I should have started with variables. So yeah, there are actually 5 types of variables, but you should only use the first 3. So the application variable doesn't really make any sense because they have to be in the main build of Banter, and the same with the saved variables. We will explore how we can maybe open this up because this is data that will stay after you close the app and reopen it again. But this is also something, this has to be in the main build. So you can use graph variables. Those variables are only value on inside of this graph. You can have objects variables. Those are those work on the whole object. So for example, you have multiple script machines on your object, and now you have a single variable in here. They will be used from both script machines. But inside of the script machines, when you have graph variables, then they will only be used by the current graph. So when I go here, it doesn't show up, but the object variable will still show up in this graph. And then you have scene variables. Scene variables will actually automatically, as soon as you get a visual script, a script machine in your scene, it will add this object in here, visual scripting scene variables. And here you can add variables that are valid over the whole scene and everywhere available. You can think about global variables for this one. But yeah, you can always just access them in the toolbar here inside of the visual scripting graph. They will always be here. But yeah, B1, this could clutter up pretty quickly if you put everything in the scene variables, and yeah, it can get pretty chaotic. I'm speaking here from experience where I started putting everything in the scene variables, and at the end I had to scroll 5 minutes to get down to the end of my list of variables. Okay, right, then after the basic if, I would say what is super important is a loop. So actually most of the time I'm using the for each loop. This will need a list as an input. So in visual scripting, you have these ahead of time lists. So let's quickly add a variable. And then here under the type, make sure to add AOT for ahead of time and then list. And now, here's a little bit better, you can just add objects to it. So you can have game objects, you can have just floats, integer, booleans, vector freeze, and so on, and all the different data types Unity offers.
Some list.
Just mix it all together however you want. But yeah, most of the time I would say lists will be generated. So for example, on the start, we just do some whoops, my screen is too small.
It's a weird guest name, isn't it?
Yeah. Like most of them.
So for example, I'm using the get components in children. As component, we can just select the transform. So since pretty much every object in Unity has a transform, will be used, and then you run this on start on this object. It will get you all its children. So when I'm just, let's create a few empties.
I know what you're going to do here. She's going to kill all the children. Don't let her, guys. She's going to make them disabled, and then she's going to kill them one by one.
No.
She's going to do it slowly with a delay. Destroy all children.
On loop.
They'll become orphans.
No. So
Kill the parents. Kill the parents.
Of course, kill the
So now
parents.
I'm
the
just
children,
getting
then
all
the
the children's. I'm packing them. Actually, I'm not packing them into a list really yet. So, but you see, I have here in my debug log all my objects because I get this list from the get components in children, and then I'm just running the for each loop and for each object. So I'm just using the body, that's the loop, and the exit that will be executed when the loop is finished. I'm using just a simple debug log, and I'm just getting the name of the current item. And this will just return all the different objects that are children. And if you want to save this list, all you have to do is let's actually get rid of those things, and we can just, you can drag and drop variables into the graph. You see it shows get list. So if you just drag and drop, it will get the variable. If you hold Alt, then it makes set variable. And if you hold a Shift, then it checks if the object has the variable. And I think there was a third one, a fourth one. No, no, I think that's the event. So actually, I think in the events, nope, I think you need an extension for that function. But yeah, so now we just, let's get rid of this one. And we just plug this one in here, assign the list. On the object, it shows always the name. So you can change this all the time. You also get a drop down, and this shows the object the variable is on. So if this is now set to this, so it's using the same object, but you can also add another variable called, I don't know, variable object, and then just assign any other object here, and then just drag this in. Let me make this a little bit bigger. And now we can just assign this object here. So it gets now the variable from the object we defined here. And that's how you can still access variables from other script machines without putting them all into scene variables. Actually, we are still running. So let me actually run this once.
Ooh.
Oh, yeah. I think it can do this on runtime in the inspector. Oh, and we are on the embedded graph. Okay, yeah, this makes sense. Okay, and somehow it did not do it. Nice. Yeah, I think in this case you actually need this one, and then you go with the collections list and then add item to list, and then we get our list here, and then we add our items to the list. And there we have our list populated with all the objects. And also, you probably saw there's a little error popping up. Whoops, that was not my intention. So we have here this error that says, oh, element not allowed in Banter. Unity engine game object dot find. So, oh, okay. If you have this error, and at the end you still get another one that there are some nodes that are not allowed, but it shows you for each object element that's not allowed an error log, then the whole graph where this is in won't work. So make sure that you run your script and then, whoops, and make sure you are not using any nodes that are not allowed. So for example, there is this nice little tool on the asset store. It's completely free. It's called Node Finder. And in here, I can just paste now GameObject.find. And it says, oh, it's here in the state machine test asset start. I click on it and it will go directly onto the object and shows me exactly where my problem is. It shows me exactly, oh, this node here, this is not allowed. So I'm getting rid of it. Let's just play again. And all clear. Everything is working. No illegal nodes are present in the scene.
Illegal.
The Banter
No
police.
pirated nodes.
Illegal.
How dare
How do you
try
find
to
game objects?
find a game object?
What about children? Can we find children? Can we?
You cannot find your children.
No.
Everybody,
Oh.
Peroxide cannot find his children.
Oh no.
And that's good, because when he does find them, he's going to destroy them all.
But I lose them all the time. I need to find them.
I should note we're on the hour there, Aline. Do you wanna keep going?
Just another quick one,
Okay.
because we just want to do some basic ones. So let's do something like the basic. If you wanna, I think I don't even have it in here. Whoops. Yep. Quickly open up this project. Yeah, but if you, for example, just now want to do a trigger event, let's add a simple sphere collider to this object. Check is trigger.
Can I talk to
And
you?
now you can create in the events in physics, you can have on trigger enter. So now every time a rigid body enters this trigger, it will trigger this event. If you want to limit this more, so you want to know actually what is triggering, you can just drag out here the collider, and then at the top it always shows what's actually compatible with this data stream. So now here we have all the collider options, and here we can actually get the actually we don't want the collider, we want the game object, and here we want the yeah, we want the tag from the game object. So now we know we have all those tags. For example, we can go with the finish tag. So now we need actually to compare those. I think there's a specific function. Yes, there's game object compare tag. So you just, no, that's not correct. So what you could do, you can actually have your object you want to enter with a specific name. So for example, that's my rigid body. Let's add a rigid body component, sphere collider. And here we can add a variable rigid body game object and assign the game object. And now we can assign this tag with the game object. So it checks all the object we have predefined and it makes sure that the tags are equal. So only when the tag of the object that enters has the same tag as the object we defined, it will give a true here. So we need another if, and here we can just do a small debug log. And then here I'm most of the time just adding a quick string. I say yes, and then just Control D to duplicate, and then say no. Okay, let's just duplicate this one.
I got banned, bro. I got banned. I'm literally playing the game right now, yeah. And I got banned.
Okay, so let's first insert the ones. Whoops.
So this, and I got banned.
Those shouldn't be.
Ban me, 'cause all I did was this. Like, oh, you can't see because you're not in
Let's
VR.
move this in. You see it triggered every time I enter, but it also says it did debug. Actually, I
got banned for it.
made it wrong.
Now I can't join back. I asked the CEO if he could unban me. He said he's not removing it. And he's telling me to post it on Discord.
Oh no. Okay. The object is untagged. So
Discord, fam, I'll cuss at this game.
actually, I have to assign the tag first.
Right now, cuz I'm gonna do that right now. Right now.
So now this is true. And this one is false. This triggers no, because only the object with the correct tag entered the trigger. And you can also do, let's just grab the I have to find actually the object. Oh yeah. So if you just want to predefine your tag, you're just going on trigger enter, and then you're just inserting the string of the object. So in this case, we have Banter player head to make sure only it triggers when the player enters the trigger. And let's do a little bit of nesting. I think so much time we still have. So now you have this pretty basic setup and you don't want to rebuild it every time. So now you can actually, I think you can, no, you can't. They removed this function. But you can create under nesting, you can create a subgraph. So let me just copy this, then we get rid of it. Double click on the subgraph and then just paste it in. And the output, we say, okay, we have here an output event, and you can also add some variables. So for example, let's get the name string. So we say game object get name, enter this here. The input we don't need because we already have trigger enter. But what is cool that you can actually, for example, let's use it either way. So we can just say now, okay, we have a string and we call this tag. Let's connect this here. And you can also say has default value. Let's insert it here. And you see, we already have here some hierarchy going on. So now we are in the subgraph, and actually let me rename this to trigger enter. So now we have one compact node where we can just add our tag, and it makes all of this, and at the end when the tag is the tag we define here, it will output the signal, so it will trigger the event and it will also output the name. And yeah, you can just go as many levels as you want. I had sometimes like when you are in here, you can go, yeah, at some point I had the whole taskbar here full with just sublevels. So there is pretty much no limit and you can go as deep as you want. Let me actually see, where do I have a good example? Oh, that's the timer. Yeah, so this is pretty much also for functions. So you don't need any signal input or output. So here I'm having a simple remap node. So this is just a subgraph. So you just have here a bunch of map nodes in here for minimum input, minimum input minimum value, input maximum value, output minimum value, output maximum value. So at the end, I just have here a nice little node and I say, okay, if I have a value, any value, and it is between 0 and 90, then it will just remap it to 0 and 360. Whoops, I shouldn't double click. But yeah, and the nice thing is those subgraphs, this one is now also saved as an asset. So this is actually just here in my project, and that's how it looks when you look at it individually. And the nice thing is you can just share those. So I can just go into my Explorer and then I can just get this asset and just throw it in the Discord and everyone can use it. That's just a great way to share functions.
Nice. Well, listen, what do you think, Aline? Do you want, is there any much more you want to cover? I noticed that, oh, I thought we were taking people away from Psycho's event, but no, there's quite a lot of people in there.
Oh,
sorry.
Okay, then I would say we call it a night.
That sounds. It seemed like you
But
were
yeah,
having fun with that. Maybe we can do something on the waffle event if you want to pick something back up, or
yeah, sure. For example,
we can talk about that later.
those are one of
Yeah,
my favorite
yeah.
subgraphs. It's just some tweening. So you define just a curve and then it defines the tweening. For example, this weird looking curve, this simulates light flicker. So I'm setting here shader values just with the curve animation. And at the end, you just have here a timer in there, and when it's getting triggered, it will evaluate your curve and then will output the value. And that's how you can pretty much lob anything. So with this little function, we should have a channel just for sharing notes, because
Yes.
tweening's super useful, and I use them for pretty much anything. I have tween float, tween color, tween quaternions for rotations, vector freeze, and so on. It's just super useful, and yeah, love them. Okay.
Awesome.
Hop.
Awesome.
Excellent.
Yeah,
Thank you.
that's awesome. Thanks so much.
Yes, thank you.
Thanks, Aline.
Yeah, I'm sure there'll be
Brilliant.
more of these in the future. And
I hope so.
yeah, visual scripting is. It sounded like it's getting Hubber excited, which is interesting. I definitely heard a few ohs from over that side of the room while we were. Oh, well, would you look at that? Jesus.
Maybe I'll download Unity someday.
Oh,
Want a hug?
Wow.
Hallå!
Progress.
Kan du höra
He wants,
mig?
he wants to hug
Yes.
an enormous
Ow.
person.
Does
That's
every
what it is.
viewer want a hug?
Hello.
Wants to hug somebody who can really lean into
Okay,
the
so
whole
that
bear
works. So
hugging.
Crystal Lake by day works, but Crystal Lakes by night does not. That's interesting.
Yeah, sounds good.
Yeah. So Psycho doesn't work. 007 doesn't work.